Hey everyone, it's Nico, and this video is going to be a follow-up to the one I did about a week ago where I showcased some really awesome 90s inspired indies that recently released and fell a bit under the radar. So this is more of the same, but not necessarily 90s inspired, just all pixel art style indie games, and definitely ones that flew under the radar yet again. This is a really tough time of the year. It's almost oversaturated with games, and especially for indies, I think it's tough to stand out amongst all the AA, AAA, whatever A releases that come out. So if you're looking for some more games to play that maybe are a bit more niche, these are going to be games you should absolutely check out. I had a lot of fun playing through all three of these, so I hope you enjoy this video, and if you haven't seen my previous one yet, I'll have a link in the description box below, and also be sure to comment below and let me know if you pick up any of these. I always love to hear which games you learn about from me and pick up for yourself. So without any further ado, let's dive into the first game. Neon Inferno is a trip into the future, New York City, 2055 to be exact, and this is a 2D run and gun and gallery shooter combo, which going into this one, I more or less knew what to expect because I did preview this back in February of this year, and I had an absolute blast with the demo. So naturally, this is one that I was looking forward to. When you first start this one up, if you play the story mode, you do have your choice between 3 different difficulties. There's easy, normal, hard. They have some differences in terms of checkpoint frequency and other things that are obviously going to affect the difficulty. But then there is also an arcade mode for you masochists out there, and I'm highly doubting that there's literally anybody on planet Earth that can beat this on their first try in the arcade mode. So I would say definitely start with the story mode first, but I played through on normal as usual, and I found it to be a pretty good challenge, but not frustrating. So that was a good starting point for me. And I'm an absolute novice when it comes to gallery shooters, so I needed to train my brain to understand that there's things going on not just in the foreground, but also in the background. There's a lot of double plane action going on, and this also happens on some of the motorcycle sections. You could switch between the foreground and the background, and the controls are definitely mapped in a way where it felt very natural and was very easy for me to get accustomed to and pick up and play. Very pick up and play friendly, even though it is pretty chaotic and complex at times. Like, for sure, sometimes there's so much stuff going on screen that it's easy to get lost in the shuffle, which is definitely a compliment to its design, because there's so many times where there's lots of craziness happening in the foreground, in the background, projectiles coming at you. They're different colors, because the green ones you can parry and deflect with your melee weapon, and then the flashing ones you can't. There's attacks you can parry and ones you can't. You can dodge roll, you can shoot in the foreground, the background. You hold the parry button and you time it just right. You could redirect bullets, which is a really cool effect. All of the different levels here were incredibly varied from one another. So this isn't one where it felt repetitious. This isn't one where it felt like there's filler and they're trying to make the game longer. This is one of those games that reminds me of why I enjoy retro games just in general, because back in the day, they didn't care how long their game was. They didn't care if it was 5 hours or 2 hours. They just wanted to put out a fun game from start to finish. This is something that a lot of modern games miss, but Neon Inferno does not miss. And to go along with that, obviously the game's a bit shorter. It took me somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours to play through the story mode, but they bank on replayability, right? They want you to play through on hard if you beat it on lower than that. They want you to try the arcade mode. There are different rankings for you to try and earn, and I mean, I got typically like the lowest 3 rankings, so I didn't do so good in that regard, but that's all incentive for replayability, and this is definitely one of those games that you will be much better at the next time you come to it. I know for me, if I played it again, I would do way better than the first time. Obviously, you learn some of the enemy patterns, the bosses, all that sort of stuff, the controls, the gameplay. You'll just get better at it, and I love that it was so varied. That's my point here, is that from start to finish, every single level felt completely different. The story was interesting. I don't want to get into it too much because there's some heavy spoiler content if I really dive into it at any length. So it's enjoyable, just know that about it. The story scenes are in between the levels. The pixel art here, you've already seen it, you already know, but I do want to emphasize how gorgeous this game is for a pixel art game. The animations, the explosions, even the on-screen action. You would think that a pixel art game that's this detailed would get crazy and feel cheap, like bullets are hitting you that you didn't even see. That's not the case at all. Every single time I got hit by something, it was telegraphed in a way where I knew if I could deflect it, I knew if I could dodge it, and if I got hit by something, I just didn't see it coming because I was looking at something else, or I was just too slow and it was my fault. It didn't feel unfair whatsoever, which is definitely a huge compliment. My only real criticism with this one is that there are some sections which are pseudo auto-scroller levels, and they're a bit awkward, and I found myself falling off the platforms quite a few times. And dying in this on normal will set you somewhat far back because the checkpoints are a little sparse. They're not so sparse that you're replaying huge chunks of the level, but it can be a bit frustrating in the later game when it really does start to get difficult. So if you're not good at shooting games like this, definitely go with the easy. But if you are, by all means, give the hard or the arcade mode a shot. And then the last thing I do want to mention is that in between levels, there are also power-ups that you can acquire and are consumable use items, essentially. It's not like Contra, where when you get a pickup, you have it till you die. These are limited ammo, limited time power-ups, and the rankings that you earn at the end of levels will earn you money. And if you're like me and you get crappy rankings, you're not going to be able to buy a lot of items, but that's your incentive to do well, is you earn more money that you can purchase these items, which will help you to play through the game. And they're definitely beneficial. There were a few bosses that I saved them for that I absolutely nuked with some of the power-ups, but I'll let you figure out which ones are the best. Won't spoil that for you. So Neon Inferno, I think it's a great way to start this video out. I absolutely love this game. The pixel art, I just can't get over how masterfully drawn this was. The music was really good, and the sound design, the levels, so much fun to play through. Can't wait to play through more of this, genuinely. And I think that's the case for me with a lot of games like this, which are less than 2 hours. There's always that incentive for me to return, whereas if this was an RPG, odds are never going to play through it again because it's too long. But if you didn't already know about Neon Inferno and you think this looks cool, definitely pick it up. It's available on pretty much every platform, so that includes PC and all the consoles. You can play it local co-op if you want, and if you play it on Steam, you can also play it online co-op, essentially, because there's that remote play feature. So Neon Inferno is one I don't think you should skip. Next up is definitely the most charming game, especially if you're a fan of the 8-bit days like I am. So this is Sir Noggin, which has an art style that is very reminiscent to the Master System and plays in a way that feels very Sega Genesis-esque, since it uses essentially 3 buttons: your jump, your attack and your sub-weapon. You can also block by standing still because Sir Noggin has a shield. So it almost feels a little bit like you're controlling Link, even though this is a 2D side-scroller. It has over 20 levels across 7 different zones or biomes. First 2 are regular levels, and then the third one is always a pretty epic boss fight, which are a lot of fun. The visuals here, like I mentioned, are super charming, very colorful, and a lot of elements of this game, just in general, harken back to some of my favorite platformers. Like, if you've seen the chests so far in the gameplay, what do they remind you of? I'll give you a second. DuckTales, woo! Yeah, remind me of DuckTales on NES, sorry. I wanted to squeeze that in there. It has that old school feel with the score and the different power-ups, and sub-weapons have a certain amount of magic they're going to use. Lots of different colorful enemies and stages you're going to play through. Different hazards for every different zone. The boss fights are different for every single level with different patterns you got to recognize. Trying out the different sub-weapons is a lot of fun in this one. And playing through it, you get to listen to a really rockin' soundtrack. This is another one, just like Neon Inferno, that is a bit on the shorter side. It's definitely shorter than Neon Inferno. It took me about an hour and a half to fully complete this. And what I mean by fully complete is I unlocked all the Steam achievements, I beat the single player campaign, then there is also a boss rush mode, there are challenges, which I believe there are 15 total, 5 across 3 different categories. There's one where you only have 1 heart, there's a pacifist one, and then a timed one. Those were really fun and some cool bonus content. This game controls really great. It's definitely one that's, I think, for an experienced platformer player like myself, a bit on the easier side, but not so easy that it's boring, because I think some platformers fall into that trap where they're so easy that I don't feel any semblance of challenge, so therefore don't really enjoy my playtime with them. That's why I don't play some of Nintendo's Kirby titles, because some of them are just way too easy. I find them boring. The challenge ramps up a little bit, and there are some challenging sections. I wouldn't say difficult. I was never frustrated. I only died, I think, a few times throughout the entirety of the game. But it's interesting enough challenge-wise, but it is definitely on the easier side if you play a lot of platformers. This hit me in all the right ways for somebody that really enjoys retro games. So if you do, you'll absolutely love this. It's a very cheap game. It's only a few bucks. It's currently only available on Steam. Hopefully it'll come to consoles later, but typically that depends on how well it does. So if you want to see it on console, go grab it on Steam. Sir Noggin is a really fun game. Charming visuals, fun little story, plenty of variety, awesome soundtrack. Don't skip this one, it's super cheap. Then lastly here, I've got Gigasword, which is a puzzle-heavy and story-heavy Metroidvania. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, another Metroidvania. I know, it seems like everything's a Metroidvania or a roguelite these days, but this is one that I think is going to be hard for me to communicate exactly how I feel about it, because I liked what I played of it, and I think it's a good game, but I also think it's catering to a very specific niche of players. And I don't think that anyone outside of that small audience or that small niche of players is going to like this one, because it has some elements to it that when you combine them together, it's a bit of a weird mix. This one, the story is probably the best part of what I played of it, and it explores the relationship between Ezra and his best friend, which is like this owl man, essentially. I don't want to say much beyond that because very early on it turns into spoiler territory, but I thought that the story that I did see from the few hours that I played of this one was very charming and not quite heartwarming, but very touching, I guess is a good way to put it. And then as far as the visuals go, this is again another pixel art game that I think has a really cool style. It's again very colorful and almost looks 16-bit Castlevania-ish in a way. But the main mechanic here is the Gigasword, which, as the name suggests, is a massive sword. But what's different in this game is the sword can be set down, and you need to do this a lot. Because when you're carrying the sword, you're a little bit slower, you don't have as much mobility, but you can engage in combat. When you set the sword down, you can use it for a lot of the game's puzzle solving, and there's some pretty tricky puzzles. And also, it increases your mobility and allows you to mantle off walls and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on there that I think is really interesting. The best parts of the game are definitely the story and the puzzle elements, but then when you get into the combat, which is another key component of it, it's very slow and Souls-like. You don't have a stamina bar, but your attacks are super slow. And then you can also dodge, but it feels very slow. So I don't want to say it's unresponsive, but it's very, I don't even know if I want to say clunky, but it's very slow, and I don't particularly love that. I like the fast-paced games, right? I like games like Bayonetta with a lot of mobility and a fast movement speed and dodging, and everything feels really fluid. This is just a bit too slow for me, and the boss fights can be really difficult. Dying in this is Souls-like and punishing because the save points are very spread out. Instead of souls, you have ore, which you need to upgrade your sword, and you drop all of them when you die. So then you'll need to backtrack to reacquire what you dropped. And the amount of ore it takes for the upgrades in this means you're often carrying hundreds of ore, and then dropping that is a scary prospect. The positive part of the combat, though, is that learning the different attacks for all of the enemies I encountered made it very satisfying when I had a full understanding of how to deal with them and not taking any hits, because health doesn't drop very often. And then, of course, as you're playing through, you're going to get some upgrades. There's hidden collectibles and reason for exploration and backtracking like any old Metroidvania, right? The map's very good as well. But you will eventually start to unlock some magic abilities, which allow you to use your mana bar, and that'll become a thing. But as far as Gigasword goes, like, if you enjoy Metroidvanias that are platformer heavy and you don't like them being more difficult and having some punishing aspects to them, then I think you'll enjoy this one. But if you don't like Souls-likes, you don't like Metroidvanias that incorporate Souls-like elements, or maybe you're not a big fan of puzzles, the majority of this game is puzzles. Sure, there are some pretty cool, epic boss fights. Sure, there's some combat. Sure, there's some exploration. There's all those things that you can expect in a Metroidvania, but this one has a lot of backtracking. There's a lot of times where you're going to create a shortcut for yourself. It doesn't guide you very well, so you have to wander around sometimes to figure out where you're going. It's very slow in terms of upgrades and progression that you're going to make. This one is just for a very specific niche, and if this doesn't sound like one that you're over the moon about, odds are you probably won't like it. But I did think it was very fun from what I played of it. I'm just not particularly the target audience for a game like this, so I did try to highlight the good and the bad and show a lot of that off. And ultimately, you know, this one's up to you to decide, like any game essentially, if it'll be fun for you. I think it's good though, so if you thought it looked good, check it out. If you're kind of on the fence, I'd say you're probably not going to like it, because a lot of the elements here just don't really feel like they mesh that well together. And also, I just feel like in general, this is one that needs some additional player feedback so that they can kind of iron out some of the peaks and valleys. It has a few rough patches at times where the save points are so spread out and the areas are so large that it's easy to get lost, confused, and annoyed. But Gigasword's pretty good. if you don't mind the criticisms that I have and you are part of that very particular niche. So hopefully you felt like I covered that one enough where you can make an informed decision if this is your first time learning about it. But that's all I've got for this video. These were 3 pretty fun pixel art indies that recently released that I hope you enjoy learning about and hope you'll play for yourself. And if you do, again, let me know in the comments below. Also, check in the description box if you want to see my previous video, as I covered 5 games in that one, with 4 of them being out now, 1 coming in the future. I love covering some of the more niche indies that are amazing games and sharing them with all of you. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.